I'm really excited actually about today because finally someone asked me to talk about something that they're interested in. And I love that because usually what I'm trying to do is talk about things that I think may be of interest to you, things that we struggle with in the office that we're working on, and see if that will help you. Ideas that I've learned and that I'm hoping that by teaching them to you, that they might help you in some way. And so I'm really excited that someone actually said to me, I believe she had asked a little bit about wanting to start a family while also being a dentist, and for me to touch on what that's like and maybe some things I've learned, or if I have ideas around best practices for doing that. And I know that causes stress for so many women, is how am I going to balance this like career that I have and then also wanting to start a family when I feel like my job takes up so much of my time. And I hear that from a lot of people. And I will say, everything I share with you today, of course, is my personal experience. So I'm going to be sharing my story and how my 3 children came into this world and where that landed on the timeline of me and practice ownership and my residency and all of that. And I'm going to do my best to pull from my own personal experience the lessons that I learned along the way and the things that I did that helped me and my husband get through some of these challenging times that we had bringing kids into this world, and also being a successful practice owner at the same time. And maybe some of the things that I share with you will inspire you, will make you think, will maybe give you some hope and some clarity around maybe what you want it to look like for you. I will start this off by saying that I truly, truly believe, and most of you have heard me say stuff like this before, that anything that you want to have in this world, you can have, and anything that you want to make possible, you can make possible. And usually it comes down to your belief in yourself, a vision you have for yourself, and then being able to take action. Sometimes it's imperfect action, but being able to take action, baby steps, little step at a time towards that thing you're after, and being okay with failure, because failure is on the way to success. And those lessons will all come with the stuff that I'm going to share with you today. You might see me looking over to my other monitor here because I just gave myself some like really loose notes today. Usually I am a little bit more organized, but this is the life I've lived, so I felt like I didn't have to write all of it down beforehand. So we'll start with my journey into having children. Any of you who are specialists can probably remember how nerve-wracking it is to go and interview to do your residency. And I only applied to one residency because my husband was already at the University of Michigan doing his oral maxillofacial surgery residency, and I didn't want to leave him. We had already lived apart for a year. He did a GPR down in San Antonio, Texas. I was still up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, finishing dental school, and I decided I wasn't going to leave again. I was working as a general dentist at the time, but I really wanted to apply to ortho. And of course, they're not supposed to ask you these questions, but I was asked by several faculty members at the University of Michigan when I planned to have children, because I was married and I was applying into the program and I was already working and most people were coming straight out of school. Many people asked me when I was going to have kids. And of course, I gave the appropriate answer, which was, I'm not going to have children until my life is figured out and I finish my residency and I'm like moving on with life. At the time, I wasn't sure if I was being 100% honest about when I was going to have kids, but I was as honest as I could be in that moment. And then as my husband and I were surrounded by people our age who started having babies and we started talking about it, we decided that there was actually no perfect time in this world to have children, because there was not going to ever be a time in my career where I was going to have nothing to do, and that it wasn't going to be a struggle for me to try to take some kind of time off in order to have children and raise children. And so we talked about it and I did the math and I said, well, look, if we get pregnant this month, which was 2 months after I started, or the month after I started my residency, then I would be due to have a baby right around the time that we get 2 weeks off, which is the only break I get in my residency. And so that would work out pretty well if the math all worked out, and we'll figure it out. And so we got pregnant right away, surprise. And I had my first child at the end of my first year of my ortho residency. Now, one of the frustrations of that, of course, was there were many faculty who were very angry with me for getting pregnant during the program, and that had only happened a few times at Michigan. And so a few people actually tried to get me kicked out of the program. It was a bit of a struggle, but we got through it. And then I had the struggle of trying to figure out how to be a full-time resident and not really get any time off and raise a child and finish school. And this was the first time in my life that I really, really, really had to figure out how to ask for help. Because what happened was my daughter was born. She was born on her due date, which was very handy for me because that was literally right before we had a 2-week break. And I knew that I could have 2 weeks off with her, and then I would have to go back to being a full-time student. And there was nothing else. There was nothing I could do about that. And so I had to lean on family. At that point, we had no family in Michigan. So my mom agreed to come for 2 weeks. My mother-in-law agreed to come for 2 weeks because she couldn't go to daycare till she was 6 weeks old. So I stayed home for the first 2 weeks. Then my mom was there for 2 weeks, and then my mother-in-law was there for 2 weeks, and then she started full-time daycare after that. And we had her in a daycare that was close by, that it happened to be one of the oral surgery residents' wives was the lead at that daycare. So I felt like she was in good hands. But let me just tell you that I was a freaking disaster. I might use some adult language today since I'm not scripted. So my apologies. I'm a Canadian. I swear a lot. But I all of a sudden had a baby in full-time daycare when she was 6 weeks old. And I was in school Monday to Friday. Luckily, it's ortho, club ortho, as my husband called it. So we didn't have call or crazy schedules. And I was a total zombie. We were struggling with breastfeeding. I wasn't getting enough sleep. My husband really couldn't help me in the evening because as an oral surgery resident, he was literally never home and on call all the time and always sleep deprived. And so I was like, I will manage this. And so I took on all of it. And I had to lean hard on family at the beginning and then on friends after that, because there were times where we were in a bind. And the lesson that I took from that and what I really took from after I got over the zombie stage, number one, by the time she was 6 months old, I really had all my stuff together, and it gave me so much confidence knowing that I could do hard things, and I got through it, which was amazing, which is why I ended up getting pregnant again relatively quickly. But I had never been through something so challenging as that time in my life. I would say that was probably the hardest thing I had ever done to date. And just getting through it as I fumbled, and I fumbled a lot, taught me a lot about me, a lot about how I deal with stress and adversity, showed me where I had places to do work. And also I had such an appreciation for community that I didn't have before because we started to lean on friends. There were times where I'd call a friend up and be like, oh my gosh, I have nowhere to put my kid. They can only be at daycare for 10 hours in the day. I have a class in the evening. Can you take my baby? Please, because I can't miss this. And I even leaned on faculty who let me bring my infant daughter to classes that happened outside of regular hours because there was just no way for me to have anywhere to put her. And they were totally fine with that. And they're like, she'll learn through osmosis. Just bring her, And I brought her to class with me, which was amazing. Being a student, though, is different than being a practice owner. I had responsibilities and I had to pass school and I was trying to write my thesis and all of these things, but it wasn't the same as being a practice owner because things actually got really hard and I didn't realize how hard until that came in. So I finished my residency 2 weeks after I defended my thesis. I had my second child. Faculty also mad at me because I was pregnant, although he was not born during residency. And so I graduated, had my son, and 3 weeks later moved back to Canada, leaving my husband in Michigan with a 2-year-old and an infant to start working right away because we had been students for so long and we had no money and one of us had to get a job and I had finished my residency. So I had to go work. So I moved back home, moved in with my parents. Wasn't super excited about that, although they're awesome. I never thought I'd move back home, but I leaned heavily on them and started working as an associate in a pediatric practice. And they had never had ortho in there, so it was kind of like a startup because I was trying to set everything up. And at that time, my sister actually watched the kids because she was home on maternity leave. In Canada, you get a full year. So she was home on a maternity leave. And so she was watching my babies. She lived close to where I was working and I would drop them off and go to work. And doing this as an associate, I felt like the timing was pretty good. I was trying to figure out how to be an orthodontist in practice and have 2 kids, but also no husband. Because he was still in Michigan. So he finished his final year of residency in Michigan while I did that first year back in Calgary. And then he did a year after that in Scotland for a fellowship. while I was still in Calgary. So for 2 years, I was a single parent in Calgary. And in that time, I worked as an associate, and then I purchased a practice. And that part in between, I will save you. I will save you some of the details of how that transition in work went. It's probably not worth it. But with an infant and a 2-year-old, and trying to be an orthodontist for the very first time and figure out how to set up a practice, once again, I had to lean on people around me, and I had to ask for help. And when I say ask for help, I mean in every which way. I had help with childcare. I had help at home because I was living with my parents while I was building a house. And so my mom literally fed us. So I had help with food. She was working still full time, but she would come home and she would make dinner for everyone. I had help with childcare because my dad loves to rock babies to sleep. And so I had other adult bodies around without my husband around. And I wasn't afraid to lean on them for the things that I needed when I was going through that part of this. And I think a lot of times women come to the conclusion that either we have to do it all, or we should do it all, or we're not really sure what is the best kind of help to have or how we do it. And I will say that childcare for a lot of people is the biggest challenge. And I've heard many different setups that I love. I know of some women who had children when they were working as dentists, who had nannies who literally came to work with them, or who brought the baby to them so they could nurse. Because you can pay people to do just about anything that you want them to do. With my third child, I got pregnant on a visit to my husband in Scotland while he was there. And bonus baby number 3 came along, and she was born 2 months before he was finishing his fellowship and going to be back in Canada. And at the time that I was 9 months pregnant with her, I purchased an orthodontic practice. So I was leaving as an associate at the practice I'd been at for almost 2 years, and I had purchased an ortho practice in a different part of the city, and I was going to start there. And so I closed on the deal, and I literally started working there immediately after my third child was born. At this point, we had a full-time nanny. I was living in a house that I had built. And the full-time nanny, of course, was taking care of my other 2 kids, taking my oldest at that point to preschool while I was at school, was helping with cleaning, with laundry, with errands, with anything I could have her do, was keeping the kids safe and entertained. So paying for help over an extended period of time, I did. We never thought that daycare was going to be a good choice for us because we needed to know that even if kids were sick, someone would take care of them. We were very lucky, and all the nannies that we had never really had a lot of sickness themselves. So we weren't worried about, we never really had the issue of people calling in sick, and we had backups. We have grandparents in the city and aunts. And so there were always somebody that we could reach out to should there be a reason that childcare fell through. Of course, being an oral surgeon and an orthodontist is very difficult for us in the middle of the day to abandon ship and figure out what to do with kids. And so having other adults around who could drive and who could take care of people and was super duper important. I also learned very quickly that I had to be able to delegate all of the things that I really didn't need to be spending my time doing. The biggest frustration is often, if work is taking up a lot of time and energy, is that how do I have quality time with my family if I also have all this work that I have to do? And we never want to feel like we're being pulled too far in one direction. If you feel like all of your time is in work, then you feel like you're missing out on stuff with your family. And I can't tell you that there's a perfect way to balance it, but I can tell you that I have learned over time that the quality of time I spend with my family means far, far more than the quantity of time I spend with them. And so I work very hard to be very present with my children and to engage with them and ask questions and make sure that when I'm present, they know I'm there for them. And as they've gotten older, that's become super critical because I'm busier, I would say, now than I ever have been, but I feel like they think that I have more time for them because the time that we spend is so purposeful. When they're little, you're just trying to keep everybody alive and stop yourself from being a complete zombie from lack of sleep. What I ended up doing, my solution with my third baby, because which was hard for me, all of my friends in Canada were getting a year off of work, paid, having babies and being self-employed. I did not have time off. What I did with my third is actually I took her to work, and I knew I was going to have to pump all day. And I thought, well, if I'm going to have to pump all day, I might as well just feed the baby. And my children sleep for the first 3 months of their life, literally all the time. And they just eat and sleep, and pee and poop. And that's it. And I thought, third baby, I'm a pro at this point. I'm just going to bring her to work with me. And so that's exactly what I did. After I think I took 2 weeks off. So I took 2 weeks off. And then I brought her to work with me, and I had a little swing in the corner. She was my third kid. I had nothing but parents coming in with children, and people still talk to me today she's now 12 and a half years old, about how they came into the practice and they got to hold my infant newborn or walk her around or bounce her if I was trying to see patients before I could go nurse her, keep her occupied, or she'd just sleep in their arms, and how much they love that. And they ask me about her all the time because I brought her to work with me, and she was at work with me for about 3 months. And then as soon as she was awake enough that we really couldn't entertain her at work, because my team also was helpful in entertaining her, then she got to stay home with the nanny. And so then she was home with the nanny, and we had the nanny 5 days a week, but I was only seeing patients 3 days a week initially. And then it was 3-4, 3-4 was my schedule. So I've never worked 4 days a week or 5 days a week consistently. As an orthodontist, I think I have that luxury, although I do think anyone can work part-time if they want to. But we've always had help 5 days a week, because what would happen is on the days that I wasn't working, I wanted to spend time with my children. I didn't want to spend that time doing laundry. I didn't want to spend that time going grocery shopping. I wanted to spend time with my children. And that was how I found my balance, was having care, like help in the house full time, even if I wasn't working full time. And so if I had a Friday off or a Thursday off or a Tuesday off or whatever it was, I got to do everything with the kids, and the help that was in the house did the cleanup, the laundry, the grocery shopping, the errands, whatever it was that I needed, so that I could just spend time with my children. And there are many ways to delegate and to divvy duties up. And some of them are, paid, and some of them are not. I mean, some of us have spouses who are super happy to help with just about anything that we could need. And some people actually need to find help and to delegate. I will say that people tell me all the time, either that I'm crazy, that I did things in the order I did and the fashion that I did, or that I'm some kind of superwoman. And I would say I'm probably definitely more crazy than superwoman. And the lesson in all of this is this: I did what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to have babies. I knew that there was no perfect time to do it. And I still believe in that. I still actually don't think there's a perfect time to do anything. And I knew that whatever I would have to do to make it work, I would do it. I was willing to do it. I'm a go-getter. I'm an action taker. It was going to happen. And so if someone is thinking about, how am I going to balance these two things? How am I going to balance being a mom and being a dentist? What I will say is this: you will, because if it matters to you, you will find a way to make it happen. And there is no perfect time, perfect plan, perfect anything that you can do or prep in advance necessarily. You can know things like, I'm going to need to ask for help. I'm probably going to have to master the art of delegation. I'm probably going to have to pay some people to help me with some things. I would say take some time with yourself to think about, what do you value and what's important to you? Are you going to put pressure on yourself for things that really maybe aren't important to you, but you think are important to other people or to society? I always tell people, reflect on that. You don't have to be anything you don't want to be. So as an example, I talk all the time about how I actually don't mind cooking, but I'm very happy to pay other people to make food for me. I actually don't mind doing laundry, but I'm very happy to pay people to do my laundry, because there are things I value above and beyond that. And I only have so much time in a day. And so what I have to do is prioritize. And I do my very best to live my priorities. And that's probably my best advice for you. Figure out what your priorities are and live them, which means if you need to ask for help, and you need to set up systems, and you need to delegate things, and you need to pay people to do things for you, figure out where you want your time to be spent. Where is your time most valuable to you? Where is it most important to you? And how can you live the priorities that you have for yourself and your family? And then I think you can't go wrong, because I don't think that anyone can know how this is going to affect your life until you actually live it. And so you could hear probably from 10, 15, 20 different people about how they navigated it, what worked for them. And I encourage you to ask people. Most women are very happy to share this part of their life with you. And you probably still would find that your experience is a little bit different than everybody else's is, because we all have different strengths. We all have different life circumstances, work circumstances. We all have different children that require different things of us. And so it's going to be impossible for it to just be one way. I think you have to believe in your capabilities. You have to believe in yourself and believe and understand that you are capable. Women are amazing. My mind is blown on the regular about how amazing women are and how we figure shit out. And I'm not joking about that. We do. And so if you're put in a situation where life has gotten difficult, there is something that is harder, something brand new, something you haven't experienced before, you're going to figure it out. If you're motivated to figure it out, you're going to figure it out. So there is no perfect time to have children. I don't think there is a perfect spacing of children. I don't think there's a perfect anything to do with how you create your family. You do you. prep how you need to, learn as much as you can, and then make it happen. I can say this, it always works out. It always works out in the end. I can look back on almost every single difficult situation that's happened in my life, and there have been many. And I came out a better person on the other end of every single one of them. Every single one. And sometimes you can't see it in the moment, and you really have no idea why this is happening and what the good could come of this. But I promise you always look back and go, yep, there was a reason for that. I learned something, I grew, I became a better person, and I came out on the other end stronger. So don't worry about what other people think. Worry about what you think. And make decisions based on that. And know that those of us who've been there before, so my kids are now 12, 14, and 16, we're here. So if someone has specific questions for me around children or family or how to balance both of those things, you can ask me any question you want, literally any question. I will answer any of them that have anything to do with pregnancy, childbirth, nursing, or raising children. I'm happy to tell you what my experience was and what's worked for me. I mean, I have 3 very well-adjusted kids who I love very much and who I get along with well. And I can say that having, 3 teenagers pretty much in my house has been so much easier than I thought it would be. I love my job, and I feel like I have great work-life balance. And those things came through trial and error and me figuring out what works best for me. And probably the same thing will have to happen to you. But if you want to know more about specifics or things that I've done, or you have certain questions, please ask. Ask me, ask anyone else in the group. Talk to any woman you know who's been in a similar situation, and we'll share. Community is amazing because the more people you have to talk to and lean on and learn from, the easier your journey is going to be. I always say, find someone who's done it and done it well, and then follow, right? Or ask questions. I know this wasn't as practical as I typically do when I talk specifically about practice stuff, but I do think as a group of women talking about having kids and having a practice and having a family and finding balance is super important. So if there's any other topics that you want me to cover on this front, just let me know. And if you have specific questions, you can always DM me or you can leave a comment down below. And I'm happy to put my 2 cents in, as are probably many other women in the group. And I'll see you guys next week.